This week on Boots and Backstraps, we've got Dave Miller in studio talking everything from big Minnesota bucks to a 735-pound bear.
Brought to you by Homes by Shayne and produced by Danny Geo Productions.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Boots and Backstraps podcast.
Come on now.
The hunt is on, looking for backstraps, way deep in the woods, tracking in a swamp to a hay field under the harvest moon. When the tags are filled, it's time to switch up our boots. Head down to the honky-tonk, get us a swing dance or two. We're talking about boots and backstraps.
Hey everybody, this is a show where we talk all things hunting and country music.
From the classics through today.
From big bucks to bull elk. We've got it all. Come on now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Boots and Backstraps. I'm your host, Shayne Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, country music legend, and one of the most handsome men on the planet, Tom Katt.
Did you say handsome?
Well, at one point in your life you were.
How much did you have already?
I haven't had any.
It's good to see you, Shayne.
Yeah, it's
going to be a fun show tonight.
I have to tell you, I'm super excited. You know, we've had a lot of guests on that we mutually know. This is the first time when we have a guest that I have just meeting tonight, but someone that you've got several decades of experience.
Several decades, absolutely. My oldest friend. Oldest friend in the whole world.
He said you were his oldest son, his adopted son.
Yeah, well, he's kind of a jackass when it gets right down to it. He likes to claim that he taught me everything. And, quite frankly, he did teach me a lot about hunting and nothing about fishing because I don't fish. But he's actually one of the most well-rounded sportsmen that I've ever known.
Yeah.
When it comes to hunting, anything and everything, and fishing, anything and everything. He does it all and does it well and made quite a name for himself.
Well, I've talked to him for about 10 minutes and have already gotten a real good glimpse of that.
Yeah.
The guy knows what he's talking about. So I'm excited to hear you guys talk about your experiences and certainly to maybe get some insight from him while we're in studio tonight.
Boy, I'll tell you what, we've had some
pick up nuggets.
amazing hunting experiences together and just in general life experiences. We partied our brains out.
Some of which you can talk about, some of which you can't on this podcast.
A lot of which we can't.
This is PG-13. It's a PG-13 podcast.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. We didn't grow up probably any different than, a couple of good buddies growing up, we were a little bit crazy, but we had a lot of fun hunting, though, that's for sure, and we're not done.
Well, we're going to hear a lot about that tonight. But before we get to the stories and the exchanges and all the fun stuff and an introduction for our guest, we need some whiskey.
Come on now.
Come on now.
As you may or may not know, Jack Daniels is one of our sponsors.
Well, they will be hopefully somewhere down the road.
And I'm going to try and do tonight's show. For those of you that have been watching the show, I've been wearing some rather dark glasses, and I'm going to try and do the whole show tonight without. I recently had eye surgery. I have a real rare eye condition, and the lights are really, really bright, and that's why I've been wearing those.
It's probably no surprise to anyone in the studio, including our guests, that you have a very rare eye condition. You can't just get something normal, TK.
I know, man. It's crazy. But anyway, I didn't want people to think that I'm just trying to be cool. I have a reason for wearing those glasses.
Yeah.
But
let's get a toast. Yeah, let's get a toast here to break in the night.
Cheers
to you.
Cheers to you.
Cheers to you, sir.
Here's that country music and hunting.
Yeah.
Living the American dream.
Oh, yes.
I like that little.
I'm never going to get tired of it, by the way.
Yeah.
No. Whiskey, just can't.
No.
Well, with no further ado, TK, if you can do the honors of bringing our guest in.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my oldest friend and one of the most well-rounded hunters you'll ever meet. This is Dave Miller. And if you're just sitting at home, give him a hand.
Yeah, Dave Miller. Welcome to Boots and Backstraps, Dave.
He's got a lot of nicknames. We call him Driller, Moose Miller. He shot a moose before any of us did.
The Moose Miller thing makes sense because he's a very big human being.
Yeah,
he's a big dude.
I'm a little large, yes.
You can't tell by the couch with the shot.
Right.
But yeah, you're a big boy.
What are you?
6'4".
6'4"? Mm-hmm. How old was Pappy?
How old was he?
How tall was he?
He was 6'4".
Yeah, I thought you guys were about the same size.
Yep.
We'll be talking about a lot of our old friends today. We used to have a pretty tight-knit hunting group.
Yes, we did.
I mean,
Yep.
we certainly have
We still do.
other hunting friends. But I guess what I mean is some of them have passed. But Dave Miller and I and a guy named Tom Blazieski.
Yeah.
Does that sound Polish?
That sounded Polish to me. You should know.
Tom DeRay that owns the Hog's Breath. We've had a few words about the Hog's Breath in St. Paul here and there. And then we have an old friend, Pappy,
Yep.
who's no longer with us. His name was Paul Wolf. Paul Wolf, he was a great hunter. We have some photos of him that we'll show you a little bit later. And then we have
The Elk
Wheels.
Whisperer.
What's that?
The Elk Whisperer.
The Elk Whisperer, Robin.
Robin.
And that's funny, we call him that.
Robin Muslivich.
Mishlevich, yeah, another Irish name. Speaking of Irish, I got my green St. Patrick's Day boots on today. We call Robin the Elk Whisperer, and he's anything but an elk whisperer. He's the most aggressive elk hunter on the planet, and he's going to be joining us here in a week or two. And he's very aggressive, but he's got monster bulls all over his walls
Yep.
to prove his success and his technique. There's a lot of people that would say, well, he's too loud, he's too aggressive. I'm like, I hunt with him a lot, and every year he kills big bulls.
He does.
So whatever he's doing must be working. So
Yep.
Well, Dave, now that Tom has monopolized a little bit of the show here, let's
That's
get
fine.
to
Yeah.
Didn't
let's
mean
hear
to.
your
He's
side of
always
it.
been good at talking.
Well, he's gotten paid a lot of money over his lifetime
Yes, he
to
has.
do just that. But I'm real curious to know how you two met. So why don't we start there?
Well, a long time ago,
Yeah, back when hunting was in
Can I
black and white.
quite a
don't
while
ask
ago,
us too many old questions because our memories aren't quite what they used to be.
I actually met Tom.
That's what Lynn's for. That's
I
what Lynn's
actually
for.
met Tom by dating his sister.
Okay,
And it was quite a long
The
dating
figure
spell.
skater?
Yes,
Yep.
it was.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Rosemary. Or
Yeah.
Rosie. Yep.
Rosie was a figure skater. Dave was a hockey player.
Yeah. Played hockey and
defense, obviously. At 6'4".
no, I was actually a goaltender.
He covered up the whole goal.
I was a goaltender.
Yeah, I would imagine you would.
Yeah, I played in the state tournament 2 years for Alexander Ramsey. But anyhow, that's how I met Tom, and he was always a talker, and
Yeah,
he didn't have a dad when I met him. His father had already passed away,
right.
Yep.
and so I'm taking Rosie out on one of the dates, and he's standing in the door like a big man. He's a year and a half older than me.
And probably 125 pounds at that point.
Yeah. And he says, "Just remember, you don't do anything.
You keep your hands off of her.
I wouldn't do anything. Don't do anything I wouldn't do." I said, "Don't worry."
That's
Yeah,
that.
don't. I don't know if I worded it quite like
That's
that.
a pretty small list.
That left the door wide open.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
that's how we met. And,
yeah.
he was dating my sister, and him and his dad took me grouse hunting. I think that's the first time we hunted together.
Yep.
He had a dad that was funny. He was a French guy, Wayne.
Yeah,
Wayne
he
Miller.
was 5'9".
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your dad was.
My dad was 5'9". I'm 6'4".
So you put Miracle Grow in your oatmeal or something?
I don't
No,
know
I
what it
think
was.
the mailman.
Yeah. No,
His dad was so funny.
Yeah. But we hunted. My dad took me even before I could hunt with him all the time, and I learned a lot from him. And as time went on, we got Tom involved in it, and Tom says to me, "Can I go hunting with you guys?" I said, "Well, have you ever done it?" He says, "Nope." I says, "Yep, you can come with." I didn't know if I should give him a gun the first time out, but we did.
Well, at that point, I had pheasant hunted once
Yeah, that's
with my
true.
father.
Yep. But we went grouse hunting, and we went up to a wildlife management area up by Mille Lacs. And my gosh, we just had a ball. Back when there was a lot of grouse, I mean, we shot our limits within 3-4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And we were back home almost by noon.
Here's a reference for
There's
you.
a picture of them. I mean, we
Look
were
at
pretty
all
young
those
back
grouse.
then.
There's one duck in there, Dave.
So who's in
Remember that?
who's in this picture then?
Well, that's myself on the left in the Ken Yackel hockey jersey.
Okay.
And Tom's sitting next to the dog.
That's TK?
That's Tomcat.
Look at you.
Yep. And then that was my little nephew there, was kind of watching what was going on.
Okay.
Who's now twice as big as both of us.
Yeah. So, but that was one of our first trips ever. And we continue to grow from there.
Wow.
Yeah, we shot a lot of grouse, and that was so much fun.
Yeah, and pheasant hunting.
Pheasant hunted quite a bit in Iowa, quite a bit in Minnesota. I had a neighbor when my father passed who used to take me down to Farmington pheasant hunting. So that's really how I got into hunting. And I'd carry a .22 because I was pretty young. But I actually shot a pheasant with my .22 that was running on the ground. He stopped behind a clump. He got just ahead of it, and I shot him. I was kind of surprised. First animal I ever shot. But from there, and that's when my dad was failing. Anyway, we did go once, and I shot a couple of pheasants with him. But then I really got introduced to hunting with Dave and his dad, Wayne. God rest his soul. He always used to call me a dumb Pollock.
Well, shoe fit, wear it, right?
That's right. That's right.
He was funny.
Yeah, I know. And the first deer hunting that I believe that you went on was
with you guys.
My grandfather, my mom's dad,
Yep.
always made school buses into campers. And so
It's pretty smart.
he would go up and set up camp. Grandpa would set up camp in Wisconsin, and Tom and I and my dad drive up, and we get in this bus, and it's just great. I mean, back then we had an old fuel oil stove. And, of course, Tom and I were at the age where we could get out a little bit, so we go out and we come back, and what's Tom do? He leaves the door open on the bus, and it's about 10 below. So the old stove...
Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So this is where Tom leaving the door open started?
Yep.
Because he still does that now.
So
It's the dead of winter. He's walking out of the studio, leaving that door hanging open.
Yeah. So anyhow, we get our butts chewed by my dad because he's sleeping next to the stove, and he's down there on fire because the stove's red hot and it's freezing in the back of the bus. That was just starters, and it was all learning experiences as time went on. I know he didn't do it again. We just continued on hunting, and we had a great season that year. Aunts and uncles, and that was back during a family deal.
Yeah.
It was my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, and Tom was there, and it was just a family ordeal.
He's a member of the family at that point.
Yeah, he was, and it was just a big family thing back then. That was what happened in Wisconsin. They closed schools so people could go, the kids and everybody could go hunting for 9 days.
Wow.
Their season's over Thanksgiving week, and
I wish they still did that.
well,
They do in Wisconsin.
I don't know if they close the schools
Well,
anymore.
I don't know if they close the school, but those families,
the families are
the
still
kids that
doing
are away to
stuff.
school
Yes.
and they come back home for the second weekend of deer hunting in Wisconsin. It's the classic deal in Wisconsin. The families get together and they hunt that second weekend. Certainly, some of them hunt the first weekend.
Yep.
But what was so cool about that trip, David, I vividly remember it. It was just, I should say, totally the classic hunt. I mean, it was David, his father, and me, but it was all his uncles, and there was like 9 of them.
Yep.
And
Grandpa.
and the grandfather, and we're all in this bus, and they handed me a glass of milk one morning, and I said, I don't know, I'm not sure, but this one might. They're all dairy farmers. You know, it's just the way it used to be. A lot of dairy farmers in Wisconsin. So they handed me a glass of milk, and I said, I'm not sure, but I think this one might be a little spoiled because the cream was on top. And they said, you got to stir that, you dummy. It was the cream, it was raw milk from the cow.
Got it right out of the milk
And I
tank.
stirred it up, and
Right
boy,
off
that
the
was
farm.
a great glass of milk. And yeah, it was a real learning experience for me because I didn't know anything about anything. And I do remember that we got 11 bucks.
Yep.
I was the only one that didn't shoot a buck.
Yep.
I had an old World War II rifle, 30-06, Springfield.
This is something you had, or you guys loaned it to him?
No, I had it.
He had it. I don't know if it was his father's or who it was.
No, I bought it, and I don't remember where I bought
Okay.
it from.
Yep.
But at any rate, one of your uncles shot 2 bucks, so we filled out.
Yep.
We all had a deer. We all had a buck. That was a pretty cool deal.
Yep.
I mean, those are great
That would be an
memories.
amazing experience in learning how to field dress them and
Yeah.
skin them, and I'm sure you did all your own process.
We did.
There we go.
did.
There's some.
That's
There's some
of them, but
outlaws.
That's a different group of guys.
Who's that handsome devil on the far right there?
Oh, you're talking this deer over here in the corner?
I'm talking about the one with the Zuba pants on. Are those Zuba pants?
I'm talking about.
No, that's
Dave,
those-
is that you?
that in the green?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. That's back when I had hair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's myself, Dave, and that's Wheels, and our
Pappy.
guy named Paul Wolf that we call Pappy. And, well, that's the Iron Buck right there.
That is the Iron Buck.
That is a monster.
That was
Where do you see, we have,
1991.
91, you said?
91, yeah.
That picture was taken in Dave's
So that's
driveway
30 years ago now.
in Lionel
Yes.
Lakes.
Yep.
And that picture, well, we took a bunch of pictures. The picture that Dave took of Pappy with that Iron Buck was featured on several magazines. And Danny, if you've got the one with the Whitetail
It's white
magazine,
What did that score? Do you remember?
198.
Jeez.
it was
Oh, here you go.
that's the same driveway, and that Dave took that picture. And
It was 198.
look at that deer.
I think it grossed 198, and that was 192 something.
No, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not going to
But
say
it was the largest deer shot in Minnesota that year.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing.
such character.
We called him the Iron Buck.
Yeah, tell them that story.
Well, I can hardly tell it because I was always on the drives or didn't ever get to see the deer in the live. I was around when people told me they saw it,
By the way, folks, he's lying.
but
Jeez, look at the rack on that deer.
I never really got a shot at it. I know that my buddy TK over there got a couple whacks at him.
One, a gun jammed.
Yeah. And
Wheels got a shot at it.
And his scope fell off. Off his rifle. Yep. And, I mean, it was just weird. The day that Pappy got that buck,
So this buck had 9 lives like a cat.
it had been winged. It had been wounded by us. I mean, we called it the Iron Buck because nobody could kill it.
That's why it got its name.
Yeah, nobody could harvest that deer. It was just unbelievable.
He come
So where
running
did he
across
have-
the field in front of me that David walked through a woods, and I pulled up on him and forgot to lead him. He's flying at 90 yards, but then my second shot, I pulled ahead of him and click. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, his gun had jammed.
Isn't that the way it goes?
But
So where did he end up shooting him, harvesting him?
when or
Where?
where? In on the property that we owned up there.
This is in Lino?
No, this is up in Thief River
No.
Falls.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Northwest
Lino
corner.
Lakes?
Northwest corner up there, Newfold and Thief River Falls area.
Which is just about Canada.
Yeah, just about, yes. But it was so strange because Paul, or Pappy as we called him, he really didn't want to go hunting that year. And we kind of got with the rifles and we said, come on, buddy, you got to come up, man. You're just too much fun to stay home.
Yeah.
And he said, finally agreed to come up. And he said, well, I don't have any place to go. I said, well, I tell you, I says, you know where my stand is? He goes, yeah. He says, why don't you just go there? And he said, well, where are you going to go? I said, I'll go across the street and sit with my son.
Sure.
And he had to across the road and sit with my son. And he goes, well, all right. So he goes up there. And I saw the deer run into our woods, but I never could get a shot at it. And I knew that it was running right to Paul. And sure enough, bang. And that was it. And I'm just hoping that that was the deer that he shot because he said he was going to take anything he could.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of deer filtering there. Anyhow, he got that deer, and that was a day of celebration.
Boy,
Yeah.
was it ever.
Here's a
Yeah.
shot again.
He'd taken his coat and put it over the head. And he said, I just got a little one. So we all walked down to the river bottom where it fell dead. And we're all down there, and he pulled his coat off it. And we're like, holy moly.
Yeah, we
sure.
couldn't believe it. And it was a big-bodied deer. I don't know. It weighed over 200, of course, and it was. And we had to drag it up this big steep hill. It was, and snow, deep
was a
snow,
fun.
of course. That was back in the days when we got a lot of snow during deer hunting.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was all fun. Even though it was work, it was still fun.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't. We can't complain too much. We stayed in some pretty nice places up north, and
Yep.
never had to certainly wasn't mountain. It's all flat country. But then you get down in river coulees and stuff. We've had it pretty nice up there, but we've worked hard, no doubt.
And it sounds like you have sort of continued this tradition of hunting not just deer together, but you've expanded to some other species from what I've gathered.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
We've
antelope hunted, bear hunted, elk hunted.
Look at this guy.
Yeah.
Dave Miller and Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
Is that a Marlboro hat?
It is.
Look at that.
I'll be darned, it is.
Yeah.
There's a couple of bears underneath us.
Yeah, there. That was some of the first ones we ever got.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think between Dave and I, my last count, and I really don't count, I actually guided a couple of guys bear hunting now, but I think we got well over 50 bears between us. And Dave and his son, Dave shot a 735 pound bear.
I saw a photo.
Do we have a picture of that?
Unbelievable.
I think we do have.
Yeah, Denny, do we have that picture? Here we go.
735.
I mean, I'm just seeing it now in that big screen, Dave. I'm like
That
speechless.
looks like the hillside.
Yeah, it is the hillside, and that is the three.
Look at that.
We got those three that night, and these three bears. Mine is the big one on the left. That was 735. The one in the middle was 360, and the one on the end was 320.
Wow.
All very, very big.
Well, anyone
bears.
that knows anything about bear hunting knows that a 300 pound bear is a big bear.
Big bear. Yep.
Big bear.
Big bear.
It's hard to even imagine a 700 and some pound bear.
Yeah, that big bear, the 735. There he is again. We have seen him.
That's incredible.
I had seen him so many times.
What's laying on the ground there in front of him?
That is a bottle of scent that we use from Bear Scent.
Okay.
I knew
Good stuff.
used to know the gentleman that manufactured it, and I was on his pro staff for a while and stuff, and he gave me things like that. So I put the bottle there just to show things that I was using it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you
That's nice
appreciate
of you.
that.
And we still use it today. I still have a bunch of it left over, and I still use it. It works, so we've always used it.
Can we just like maybe pump the brakes a little into this section, because I'm super curious as a guy that's an amateur bear hunter. I've been on one whole bear hunt. We went to Montana this last fall and did not have much luck, but me being on my first bear hunt in Montana there, I was by far the most experienced bear hunter of the four of us. So it was a bad deal. So can you just maybe talk a second about if somebody like me is interested in bear hunting, what's the process look like? How do you generate obviously the continued success that you've both had in hunting bears?
It's not as easy as it used to be. We bait them. We bait them here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Wisconsin also runs hounds, but you bait the bear, and everybody thinks baiting bear is so simple. All you need to do is put a bunch of garbage in the woods and the bear will come.
Right.
Well, that's
Not so.
That's really not how.
You mean it's not like it is on outdoor TV, Dave?
That's not that easy.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
No. And we used to be able to get all of the product that we used for free because they couldn't get rid of it.
Oh.
So Hostess was a customer of mine through my business that I have, and they would allow us to back up pickups and fill up Twinkies, cupcakes, all kinds of things.
Bread,
I hope to
everything.
never, ever, ever see another Twinkie.
I would imagine you're
now
probably
that, now
retired
the
by now.
Hostess is gone, but I've opened up many single individual ones, and everything had to be unwrapped. You cannot throw it out there in a package.
Yes.
Bread has to be out of a wrapper.
Yes.
It's all to keep the bait clean.
Yes.
And it's necessary.
You'd think it would be harmful
Time-consuming.
for them to eat that plastic or that cardboard or whatever.
Yeah. And some areas, like you went out to, what did you say, Montana?
Montana, yeah.
Yes, Montana, I don't believe you can bait.
Nope, you
That's
can't.
a spot and stock. I've done that too. It's interesting. It's very difficult.
Yes.
More difficult than a baiting, but baiting
So
is...
that's
baiting,
like literally stalking them? Like you see them and you stalk them?
Yes, you do.
Yep,
yeah,
it
when
is.
when you start,
That
when you
sounds
see them,
terrifying.
you stock up on them and you sneak up on them and get as close as you can.
Well, especially because Montana's grizzly country.
Well,
So
yeah.
every guy in
Yeah.
our group had a sidearm and a rifle and bear
Yeah.
spray. And
You're going to do that now, especially Montana's
bowl.
got quite a few more grizzlies. I almost believe now that they actually opened a season for grizzlies in Montana this year or last year.
Okay.
So because they're getting quite a few numbers out there.
Yeah, we didn't see any, luckily.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah, I've never hunted grizzlies, but I think a couple of times, either when I was out bear hunting or elk hunting, I think they've hunted me a little bit. Don't care for that.
Right.
But yeah, so the baiting part of it's difficult now. It's you have to buy more bait now. It gets more expensive, obviously.
Yeah.
But Tom and I have a little bit of a different thought on baiting. I believe in putting out as much bait as possible.
Sure.
As much as I can get out there. I've put thousands of pounds of bait at one time and come back the next day and you can't tell it was baited.
Wow.
There was that many bears. They just totally ate it all. Tom, he liked to put a little less bait so the bears kept coming back and checking it more. My theory was get them big and fat.
Yeah, right.
And it kind of
And then
worked.
quite often that's tempered by the fact that bait became harder to find.
It did.
And
It
you wanted
did.
to continue baiting. So
Yep.
I totally...
And there was certain times when you're doing that you want to not put as much out when the natural food is there.
Right.
A bear will leave a bait, not leave it, but won't eat as much maybe when the acorns are falling. Mm-hmm. Or you got cherry trees, you got your butternuts, they got all that. They'll take a natural food before they'll take a bait anytime.
Sure.
The bears are very, very smart.
Right.
They sure are.
They are just not. They're not easy to hunt.
You don't get to be 735 pounds by being dumb.
Yeah, you're right. They have a great nose on them. Their hearing is good. Everybody says, "Oh, they can't see." Oh, they can see, but they rely mainly on their ears and nose.
Sure.
And it does make it difficult. Like Tom and I have hunted many times together. I've had him in a stand with us. I've been in his, sitting in the same trees watching these bears. It's one of the fun things that I like to do. I like watching them. I've had up to 12, 13.
Here's another one with Tom here.
Another one with Tom there. I've had 12, 13 bears at the bait at one time.
Wow.
And when that happens,
Those were the good old days.
them were the
boy.
good old days, yeah. But that's back when you didn't really, and at that point, you don't have sow with cubs either.
Right.
These are all different individual bears. Sow with cubs will kind of keep the other bears away, or if it gets too overrun with the other bears, she'll get mama will take the cubs with her. Had cubs climb up my tree, had mama climb up the tree. Had a big bear climb up a tree once with Tom sitting there with me, and I kind of reach over in my pocket, and he's looking, thinking I'm pulling out a handgun, and I pull out my camera and reach over and take a picture of the bear sniffing his boots.
And it was a big bear. This was in Wisconsin, and we had, 3 or 4 bear out there, and all of them were over close to 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And they were big bears. And I'm like, wow. But Dave was waiting for a particular bear that he had seen, and I had not. And if you don't mind, I'll take the story from here.
Sure, go
We're
ahead.
sitting in there, and I'm like thinking, take that bear. Oh, that's a nice bear. And he says, that's not the one. He was demonstrating much more patience than I would have. And so it's getting dark, and back then, for those of you that remember tracker strings, which was a string that you would attach to your arrow, and they would come out of a cylinder, and you hit the bear, and the bear would run off, and the string would come out. It would make tracking easier. It was always iffy attaching a string to an arrow, as I learned once that mine got hung up on the inside of the cylinder, and the arrow went down into the dirt. But at any rate, he was rolling up the tracker string on his arrow, putting his arrow in the quiver, and both of us, our eyes just were like silver dollars.
Well, I'll never
Here
forget.
come that bear, and he looked like an Angus cow.
And Tom
was so
looks at me and he goes, "Oh my God!" right out loud.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right.
Well, it was getting dark anyway. Dave was he was thinking and trying to untwirl his tracker string at the same time, and he just said, nah, it's just too dark.
Yep.
And that bear wound up being the state record in the state of Wisconsin.
So, Dave, if I'm a guy that's just getting into bear hunting, and I'm going to go out with you, how do you teach me the ropes? How do you walk me through? This is how you bear hunt.
Well, first thing you have to do in Minnesota and Wisconsin both, but Minnesota is what I'm going to go for here, is you have to apply for the bear license in certain areas of the state. And there's a certain time of the year that you have to apply by and during that time. Then there's also another area that's a no quota area where you can buy the license over the counter, and you have to hunt the area that's just no quota. You can't hunt any of the drawing areas.
And there's
Which
probably
are
just
separated out in zones.
Yep.
Right. So you probably just go to like the DNR website and you can see the zones
right.
there.
Yep. You go right to the website and you can see where you want to go. Research it. You know, you may have a piece of land that you know somebody owns or you own it. But you'd probably be surprised as how much of this land actually does have bears on it. You just don't realize it until you start hunting them.
Yeah.
Once I started hunting them, I realized just about every woods I walked in, I saw a bear sign.
Wow.
So it was kind of interesting as I got more experienced in it. And if you've drawn a license in that no quota area, you can go through an outfitter. If you don't have any land or public land, or you don't want to try to search out your own spot, outfitter is a good way to go.
Sure.
They will bait the bear for you. You can pay them for the hunt. A lot of the hunts are 5 to 6 days. It's a great way to go.
I haven't done it myself yet, but Manitoba, I like Manitoba.
Yep.
You can shoot 2 bears.
Right.
And Manitoba is real famous for color phase
But
bears.
I was say that's more brown bear though, right, than black bear?
No,
up there?
You got both. You got browns, blacks, blondes. You got a lot of different cinnamon colors.
Yeah, cinnamons.
Different variety up there. But if you're here in Minnesota, once you figure out if you're going to do it yourself or whatever, that's when the work starts.
Yeah.
And it's not put a little pile of bait out there and
Throw a stand in a tree and
throw a stand in a tree and go sit there and shoot a bear. It's not going to happen that way. If it does, you're a very lucky person.
right.
But most of the time, the season runs from the first day of September till around the 12th to the 16th of October. So you have a lot of time.
6 weeks, yeah.
6 weeks, yeah. And a lot of times, I don't know what it is, you don't get one until the end.
Okay.
You know, you might be able to get them in the first part. They're easier to come to bait. But then after a few days, they learn real soon.
Yeah, the young, curious ones like to get in there first.
Yeah, the little ones, they're the smaller bears. And if you're after any trophy bear, it becomes a real hunt. You have to try to outthink them. Again, it's their nose that's very good. And so, it's all you want to put into it. I will say this, it takes time. It's not an easy thing to do if you want to do it on your own. And you will travel back and forth baiting. You will spend a lot of time at it to do it properly.
Yeah. So it's like every day you're out there laying bait?
I don't do it every day. I try to do it like we used to do it on Saturday mornings. We'd start baiting Saturday morning at daylight and bait until we were done, of course, on Saturday. And we do the same thing usually on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. If we had a very active bait, I might do it 3 times in a week. If I had a super active bait, which I have had, I'd have to bait it every day, which I don't like doing because that gets them too acclimated to you being there.
Yeah.
It's like they know, okay, he's here, he's dropping off bait, we give him a little time, we got it.
Yeah, right.
They learn. They're, like I say, they're not stupid.
Danny just had on the screen the Minnesota map.
Yeah.
And you can see that black area is the area where you have to apply for a bear. Those are the various bear zones. But in the green area where there are bear also, that's the no quota zone. Like right where we are right now, there's a no quota zone. And probably, well, you can see they're up towards Hinckley. And
International
if you're going to do it on public land, it's kind of, you have to compete with other hunters. If you've got private land, you know a farmer. And I know, Shayne, that you have a piece of property up by Cloquet.
Yeah, Stony Brook. Township.
It's tough to get into,
Very tough.
but I guarantee you there's plenty of bear right there. Plenty of bear.
It looks like baiting can start Friday, August 14th of this year, and it looks like they're going to be issuing more information on April 9th.
Yeah, good to
Yeah,
know.
it always,
That's true. Yep.
The baiting starts 2 weeks before the actual season opens up.
Now, Dave, you mentioned before the term sign. And if you're a hunter, we know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But for the layperson that's listening to the podcast, what exactly does that mean?
Well, you see, as you're walking through the woods, you'll see cherry trees pulled over.
Okay.
And I look at that a lot because I see these trees bent over, and I walk over there, and here you can see the paw marks ripping on the tree. You can see where they bent them over, broke them off sometimes. You can see how they ripped the leaves off to get the cherries off.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, bears also do like bucks do. They have rubbing posts.
Okay.
They have trees that they'll just climb on and just scratch, just like a buck rubs on a tree. The bears will mark their territory also.
Yep.
And this big one I did shoot, he actually marked a telephone pole.
Wow.
And the gentleman that had the cabin up the road was so happy that I shot that bear because he was getting more and more scared every year because that rub kept getting taller and taller on the telephone pole.
Wow.
And so
I'm sure every time we tried to mark a tree, it would just fall over. He was so big.
he could have. But he had a mark line that you could actually see as you're walking through the woods. I mean, we knew the area he was in, but we found all this stuff too. And that you'll find. And you always see their dung all over the place, you know, and I learned all about that as I got older and did more of it. Tracks, you find tracks in mud puddles everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
If you're looking for them,
if you're looking for a sign for bears, you're going to see it.
Yep.
And you will learn that. You will.
Yeah, the more you get out there,
Right.
you kind of easier to recognize that kind of thing.
Yep. It's. I've thought of a couple of things here. It just slipped my mind what I was going to mention too about the hunting of it. It'll come back to me, I'm sure.
So is it when you're talking
Don't
about
bet on it.
Thank you.
so when you're hunting bear, like in a stand, is that the primary way that you hunt bear?
It is. I have
Tree stand?
tree stands, yes, portable tree stands, and I have done the ground blind a couple times. That's a little more hairy,
Sure.
a little scarier.
Yeah.
A bear can come into a bait sounding like a freight train or a ghost.
Yeah, that's for
One
sure.
time you'll hear them coming for a mile away. And the next time you can be looking at your bait, look away for a second, look back, and where'd that thing come from?
Yeah, and
It's
sometimes
like it
they're
just
huge.
come up, whoop, there it is. And what I've noticed through my experiences is the smaller bears usually make the most noise.
Sure.
The little bear, or the big bear, he's the ghost. He
Yeah.
just, all of a sudden, there he is. And it's what gets your heart going. It makes you keep doing it.
And
Well,
you
there's
mentioned,
no doubt about it. You know, you can see a 10-point buck coming in and how exciting that is. But boy, big or small, when you see that black ghost coming in, it's like, man,
Yeah.
that gets your heart going.
It does.
do you
and
remember
you know,
that song by Dem Yopers called The 30-Point Buck?
The 30-point buck. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I might be able to sing that word for word.
It's a great song.
Let's not try that.
No, we're not going to.
Yeah, this is an
not
audition
gonna.
for American Idol. Dave, here's a big bear.
Yeah, that was one I shot. That one there was the 4 1/4
Jeez.
that I shot. That was probably about 2 to 3 miles from where I shot my big one.
Amazing.
735.
And this is, again, up in your land.
Actually, no, this is state land here.
Okay.
That's why I do have some property that I've hunted, but I do hunt. That's in the no quota area, but I hunt the quota also, and it's a spot that we've been baiting for
Many, many years.
many years. Yes.
You hunt it pretty much every year?
No, because I can't draw a license every year anymore.
Okay.
We used to hunt it every year. If we didn't get into the zone, the quota zones, we just hunt the no quota zones. And, you know, we had a fair amount of private property that we could hunt.
We could do that, but to
Yeah.
hunt the major baits
Right.
in the quota zone, you know, there was years that we couldn't hunt it. Lucky enough, you know, my kids got involved in it. They've all shot some nice bears also, but it's just this is my son, Mike.
There's Michael.
Yeah,
He probably goes by Mike. He's a grown man.
yeah, or Michael, whatever.
And
Yeah,
way
he's,
bigger than us.
He shot quite a few bears now, and he enjoys bear hunting a lot. Bear hunting is one of those things you don't have to get up real early in the morning. I don't do a lot of morning hunting. I do mainly.
Who's this guy?
This is my oldest son, Tom.
Okay.
He's shot quite a few bears too.
Tom,
Did
you
you
look
name-
awful young there, Tom.
Did you name him after Tom?
No, I didn't.
He
After Tom.
named him after him. He just ain't saying so.
I honestly,
Did the truth just come out?
at the time, he was
Who's your daddy?
my first child, and my wife and I are going, what are we going to name a boy? And I said, well, let's name him Tom. We don't know anybody by the name of Tom.
Actually, David said, let's name him Tomcat. What'd you say?
And I said, and all of a sudden, after we named him Tom, I have relatives that are Tom. I mean, I don't even know where it come from, but that's how he got his name.
It's like you're at the delership and you see this truck and you love it and you
Yeah.
get on the road and now you start seeing them everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
But,
what in the world?
but,
Subconsciously, I think I know where
But
that
my
name
kids,
came
no,
from.
that's another generation of bear hunting and deer hunting and everything else, and they have all picked up on it. Now I got grandkids getting into it. It's great. I
You know,
love it.
Shane, we've spent a lot of time on bear hunting, and boy, both Dave and I certainly lived a passion of bear hunting, and
We have.
we have wonderful one. But you know, we've done so many other things, gotten into the mountains elk hunting, and like you, now we Dave and I used to go out to South Dakota and antelope hunting. My goodness, what a fun deal that was!
Yes.
And Shane and I have kind of picked up the tradition, and we're going out there. I know you don't get out there and do that as much anymore. What other states did you ever hunt antelope in another state?
No, I did not.
Yeah,
No,
just South Dakota.
South Dakota, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was fun.
yeah.
Decoying them in, sitting on water holes, spot and stalking.
How long has it been since you hunted antelope?
Oh, boy. Ever since they started drilling oil out there, or the ranch that I used to go to, they started drilling on, and they're disappeared pretty much.
Yeah,
So,
Tom, you can
too much
talk about
activity.
that diminished population because
Yes.
the last few years that we've gone out there, it has been very difficult to find
Yep.
antelope or herds or anything.
And Shane and I went out last fall and the fall before. And the fall before, I was actually pleasantly surprised that we were seeing any antelope. Because like when Dave and I used to go out to, this is the northwest corner of South Dakota, and my goodness, there was a lot of antelope to be seen, and we certainly harvested a few. But they would have bad winters, and they would have the blue tongue.
Blue tongue of the diseases that would kill
And
them.
that
Like
would
the
kinda
like the
knock the-
whitetails out there.
Oh, yeah.
Also.
Kind of
Chronic
knocked
wasting
down
disease.
Right.
Yeah, that knocked down the population quite a bit, and I don't see any reason why this year shouldn't be pretty darn good because we did see some antelope, and you know he did harvest one. It's not like it used to be, but they can be had. That's for sure.
He spends half the trip talking about how good it used to be. I'm like, you're killing me. You used to be able to just close your eyes and point your bow in any direction and knock 3 of them down with one shot.
Well, I can tell you, I'll try and tell a real quick story here about antelope hunting
Yeah.
out there. It wasn't with Tom TK, but it was with a friend of ours, Brian Wheeler, or Wheels. Him and I drove out, and we were doing the spot and stock. And there was antelope, and we were seeing them. And we've always, 2 guys, you decoy, you pop the decoy up, the guy behind, tip over, shoot the thing, or try. And we're trying this, and every time we popped the decoy up, they'd run away. And we're going,
Sounds like that big buck on that decoy we had
Yeah.
behind the blind that
I'm
day.
going, what's going on here? You know, that's not supposed to happen that way.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we go back to the hotel that night, and we had met this guy with his 2 young kids, a gal and a guy, or daughter and son, and they'd killed 2 that day. And I said, how are you doing it? He said, we just put up a blind and put a decoy out, and they run to the decoy. I go, really? And he says, yeah. So I have a friend that lives in Rapid City. I called him up. I says, hey, you got an antelope decoy? He says, no, I'll call my dad. His dad, no, I don't, but I got a 3D archery target. So he took and cut the horns. It was a buck. He cut the horns off of it, took white shoe polish, made a dough out of it. I went down and picked it up in Rapid City and came back, and I says, well, you got a ground blind? He says, nope. So we stopped at Pomita and bought a pup tent. And and if anybody knows what a pup tent is, a 2-man pup tent is what we put out. And it didn't have any holes for shooting out of it, so we just took a knife and cut holes in it. Yeah. Cheap little blind. Cut the floor out of it because it made too much noise. And that night, or that late afternoon, we went out and knew where we wanted to be, put that pup tent out there, put our decoy in the tent, got up in the dark, went out there in the morning, put that decoy out. At least a mile away, I'm glassing this antelope, and it's looking right at us.
Yeah.
And I says, Wheels, there's one. It's looking right at us. I says, no, it's running at us. And this thing run all the way down. We'd flip the nickel.
And they run fast.
And they do. And he's sitting on the ground, and he's, well, let me know when it's getting close. I said, well, it's at about 400 yards. You better hurry up.
Yeah.
And we had flipped the coin. He won the shot.
Sure.
And thing runs up, stops 20 yards from the decoy, and he shoots it. And I'm going, well, that worked easy. Well, I had another 3 days. Never happened again for us, but it worked for him. And the other couple at the hotel, they got one more, and they were done. So you never know how it's going to work, how they're going to react out there, or what's going to work for you. It's something that I know worked after all, so we did that. I've also got a kind of a brainy idea to try with antelope hunting. And a friend of mine goose hunts, and he made a cow figure out of a sheet of plywood, walked behind it, and walked down by Rochester, Minnesota, walked right out in the field with these geese, and shot geese. I said, well, I bet you that'd work with antelope because the antelope are out there.
Yeah.
And the cattle are right there.
Yeah, they don't get scared by the cattle.
So I went and rented a cow costume. I went to a costume place and says, you got a cow?
Like a Halloween costume.
Halloween costume.
Oh, that is funny.
With the head and the whole works. Yeah, so I rented it.
Did you have udders?
No udders. But we
had one udder.
We go out
slapping
there.
your buddy's hands over, like, get away from. No, there's no milk in there.
We're talking about this all the way out, and everybody goes, I think it's going to work. I said, we got to try it.
Yeah, you do.
And so we get out there, and again, it was Wheels that was with me, and he goes, I can't do this. I said, what do you mean you can't do it? He goes, what if we put this thing on, we start walking, and there's a bull out there, and that bull thinks we're cute. I says, well, I'll let you have the back so you can get out and get the shot. And he said, well, if this bull comes running up, what are we going to do? I says, well, I know what I'm going to do, but you better brace yourself. Anyhow, he was so scared he wouldn't try it. So I kind of tried it by dragging it out there, but then I had to try to get it off in order to get a shot. It didn't work, but I think it would have had we done it the proper way.
Well,
so Tom,
I was going to say, Shayne.
No, you have to. So Tom had this brilliant idea before we went out last year, and he actually brought it up the previous year that he had heard about it from somebody or whatever for this antelope hunting, and we didn't really put any time into it. But then he was talking about it all last spring, and so I said, fine. So I jumped online. So go ahead, because this is.
So you bought the Montana decoy.
Yeah, but the
cow.
other thing.
What is the other thing? Oh, yeah, they make these, and I wish I would have had one on a number of times. There's a guy that we had up at the Bow Fest who sells styrofoam or foam rubber heads, like an antelope head, like a deer head, a turkey, whatever, elk,
Yep.
Mule deer. And this is obviously something you have to be very, very careful with. You don't want to be out there in the firearm season on public land with an antelope or a mule deer or a deer head on your head to get shot. This is obviously something that requires a little bit of common sense. And but I'm going to purchase one of those. Or we did purchase.
We have one.
Of those. Yes. And
It's a hat.
It's a hat.
It's a buck head hat.
Yeah. And
And
so, how many times have we been sneaking up a rise and you peek your head over and they look at you and bingo, they're gone? Mm-hmm. Well, if you peek over that rise with a antelope head on your head, I love the idea.
So he's telling me about this last spring,
Yeah.
and my first reaction is, bullshit. No way. And he says, no, you got to see this thing. So I jump online and hit the old interweb, and pull up a video of this guy. Gets out of his truck on the side of the road. There's a herd of antelope down this little crest out into this middle of this field. And there's a barbed wire fence. He puts this thing on his head when he's in the truck, and his buddy's filming it. Gets out of the truck, and he walks right up to the fence line, and the antelope see him, obviously. And they don't spook. They're just staring at him. And he climbs over the fence with this thing on his head, like clumsy human climbing over the fence. And they just
could
keep
see him
watching
climbing and everything?
Yeah, and they just watch him. And then he starts to crest this hill, and he gets down on his hands and knees, and he just starts crawling out there like he's an antelope. And they literally just sit there and watch him. They don't spook. And he got all the way down. There
we go.
Yeah. See if we can see. No.
I don't know that this is the same company, but
Decoy Hat's what we're looking for. Antelope Decoy Hat.
these look like more like
Antelope
pull over
Antelope
your
Decoy
head
Hat
sort of thing.
Yeah. When she pulls it up, I'll point it out to you. So anyway, so this guy doesn't have a weapon on him. He's just testing this thing out, product testing it. And he got all the way down to, for sure, less than 100 yards. Yeah. And the antelope never spooked. And he had this thing on his head.
And he was walking.
Yeah, here we
crawling.
go.
There they are.
So the one we bought's the one on the far left.
Okay.
The Decoy Hat there. It's also the fourth one from the left. That one there, yep.
Thank you, Danny. That's cool that you bring that up that fast.
Yeah, it's the greatest thing ever. It literally is just a hat. You just put it on. It comes with a little chin strap, like a helmet.
Bada bing. Hey, will you take selfies when you're wearing this?
Tom can.
I think I see a gentleman on the ground.
Hold on. Can you go back to that, Danny?
I saw a gentleman on the ground.
Fourth row down, third
right
from the
below
left.
your arrow.
Right
your cursor.
down one more. Right there. So that's a guy who's clearly knocked a buck down wearing this hat.
There's another one.
See, I can see crawling along the ground and coming up over a rise. But I'd
Look
be
at all these people that have killed bucks with this hat on.
I just don't.
I thought it was like the dumbest $130 or $150 or whatever I spent.
Yeah.
And then I saw this video and I was like, that's
Danny,
wild.
can you stop? Come back down a little bit. Come back down to the right. There, second picture from the left. There's what we're going to get next year. We're going to attach those to our bow. Do you see what I'm looking at? Top line, second from the left.
That one. There you go.
Those attached to your bow.
Okay.
Yep. I've seen some videos. I love that concept.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Strap it right to your bow and pull back.
Yeah.
And that way you don't have someone, you can do it by yourself. And if you remember to move your sight, if you've got an HH and sight, the one pin, then you won't hit them right between the eyes.
Yeah, well, that's because somebody tells you the wrong yardage and doesn't tell you that they're walking at you. We're spotting stock. And
I think there's still an antelope running around the prairies of South Dakota with an arrow coming.
No, actually, but my buddy's dad shot that one with a rifle a
did
week
he?
later. Yeah,
It sounds like there's a story here, though, gentlemen.
Well, we were spotting and stalking an antelope, and Tom was, I think it was Tom. It was in behind the decoy.
I don't think I was with you. I think it was Wheels.
John. It was John.
John,
I put my buddy out there. Anyhow, we are spotting this and stalking this antelope, and he's ranging through the finger hole of the decoy. And he tells me it's at 40 yards. Well, I roll my sight to 40 yards. He says, "Are you ready?" I says, "Yep." He tips over. I was at full draw. I drew back, put it right in his chest, and stuck him right between the eyes. And
Did you get penetration on the skull?
All the way through, arrow sticking out evenly. I couldn't have measured it any better, front and back. And the antelope turned and ran away.
What?
I think what it did is it folded up the skin. It obviously didn't go through the skull. It would have dropped him. It folded up the skin, push the skin.
Yeah.
And just literally kind of went out both sides.
And this thing ran. And both John
You think
and
it would have knocked him out.
Oh, yeah, it didn't even buckle him.
Yeah.
John and I looked, and what just happened? I says, I don't know. I says, you told me 40 yards. Oh, yeah, but it was walking at us.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Well, there goes your yardage.
Yeah.
So this antelope runs away, and I went and looked for it all afternoon. I figured it had to die. I mean, it's wide
Probably
open
no
prairie.
blood trail at that point.
No, wide open prairie. I got to find it.
Yeah.
I never found it.
Wow.
And a week later, the rifle season opened up, and they went back to that same ranch, and his father shot it. It had broken the front part of it off, but the backside was still in the skull. So they had it mounted that way. I wish I had a picture of it. I wish I had a picture of it, I don't have the picture, but they had it mounted that way. They sent me the picture of it. I don't know whatever happened to it, but they sent me a picture of it a week later.
Well, I will say, as sort of like an interjection here to this part of your story, it's important for those folks that are amateur hunters to understand that every species, regardless of whether it's bear or deer or antelope or whatever, has a heightened sense or two. And these are the senses that they rely on for their survival. And so with antelope, it's really kind of a two-part deal, what I've learned in my limited experience. One, obviously, is their vision. And so with an antelope, what an antelope sees with their naked eye would be like a human looking through binoculars. They can see very far away.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I shouldn't maybe say this, but I think they can see 50 times, and that's 50 times better than a human.
It's amazing to me.
Yeah, I've heard something like 50, 40 times better.
Yeah.
And when we were out just sort of like checking out the landscape, because where we have hunted antelope, and you're familiar with the area.
Yes.
They have quite a bit of acreage. I mean, probably 100,000 acres.
Right.
So we were kind of like going out and doing a little scouting the first day that we were there, and you'd see a herd, and they would be 1,000 yards. I mean, they would be a mile away, and they would see you from there and just kind of look at you like you're standing right next to them.
Yeah.
Most amazing thing. So
I've told many people the story about sneaking on a herd of antelope that are literally a mile away, and you sneaking up a rise, and you come up behind a clump of sagebrush, and you think you're safe, and you peek around the corner of that sagebrush, and you got a dozen eyes just turn and look at you.
Yeah.
And you go, what are they looking at? And it took me a while. I just wouldn't believe they were seeing me. And it took me a while to believe that, yeah, they're seeing you. A mile, could be 2 miles away. They're from another planet, I think.
Yeah, we got some great antelope stories we could share.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was going to mention, Dave, and you can speak to this, is just how fast they are.
Oh, they're fast.
Yeah. I mean, they probably run 30, 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, I think 40 is the top speed.
I don't know exactly the speed, but I know that they're fast.
How fast can a North American antelope run there, Danny?
I'm going to wager 40.
Yeah, it's impressive watching them in the times that we've been out there in the prairie, because you can see forever out there.
Yes.
Watching them crest a horizon, and it's almost like you can't turn your head that fast.
Boy, they're fun to hunt, aren't they?
Yeah, they are fun.
Every species we hunt is just so much fun in a different way. Like, I'm looking at a bunch of turkeys, and turkey season's
I think he's talking about us here, Dave.
And, you know, these long winters we have in Minnesota, what a great thing it is to get out in the spring.
Oh, my God.
Oh, I think she found it. Sounds like she found
I'm
it.
going to guess 60.
61.
61.
Yep.
Miles an hour.
That's insane.
And these
What was
things
I
are like,
thinking?
they're basically like medium-sized dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, they're not like huge
A
animals.
large one's 100 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
What am I thinking?
That's
40
top.
miles
That's
an hour.
top speed.
Dogs run
Yep,
like
top
35
speed,
miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's
61. Wow.
watching them run across these, you know, prairies.
Yep.
It's real obvious that they're pretty fast.
And we talked about eyesight.
Yeah.
I know you were with on this one, and I was stalking one that was up on a knob off, and there was a drainage ditch, old riverbed, and I went that riverbed, and I got right up to where that antelope was standing on a little point. I was below ground 8-10 feet, and I climbed up this edge, and this antelope,
To get a peek.
to take a peek, and the antelope was facing directly away from me. And I thought, this is going to be easy. I can get up on the edge, draw back, wait for that antelope to turn in, I can shoot. I popped up off the top of that thing, and that antelope ran straight away from me. I think they could see out their tail, too.
Well, if you look at them real close, you know, a photo of the structure of their head, their eyes are
directly behind them.
Yeah, their eyes are spaced out real wide.
Their peripheral vision goes back.
Yeah.
It's not like ours that's out to the side. Theirs goes direct. They go back. I forget what angle it is, but it does go back.
Well, I don't know a lot about antelope, but the one thing I can say is they are delicious.
Oh, they're great to eat.
Oh, boy.
And I was going to comment, that's one of the things I was going to say about antelope hunting, too. Very important, after you've harvested one, to get the hide off it
Immediately.
and cool the meat down.
Yes.
Because it will spoil, because it's usually in August when you're hunting them. It's warm.
Right.
And if you don't get the hide off, they do get a really strong, sagey taste to them. I kind of like sage. It doesn't bother me a lot, but
It's a big part of their diet, obviously.
Right, and they will spoil fast.
Yeah.
If you don't. Yeah. And people that tell me they don't like antelope, it's probably because they're eating spoiled meat.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Not taking care of it properly.
one thing I've always done is properly take care of meat. It's very important if you're hunting. It's part of it is to manage your processing as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm talking about antelope now. Bear, again, is another very, very important thing. To get the hide off right away because they're like a pig. They're fat.
Yeah.
They don't cool like deer from both sides. They cool interior.
Yep.
And you got to get that hide off. It's a winter coat, I mean, all the time. And you have to do that or you get spoiled meat. And my mother was always proud of me. She said if Dave was to go out and get something to eat or hunt, always process it immediately, and we never had any spoiled meat. And my mom, like she said, it was one thing that she was so proud of that I learned by hunting with my father and grandfather and everything. You had to take care of the product once it was harvested.
Good advice for any hunter.
It is very good advice,
You bet.
and that was one of the things I was trying to remember back during the bear hunting thing.
Yeah.
It's about taking care of the product, taking care of the meat.
One of the first nuggets of wisdom because Tom has taught me a lot about hunting in this, brief 4 or 5 years that we've been hunting together. And one of the first things he taught me was to making sure that regardless of the animal, whatever it is, that the number one mistake that hunters make, and people complaining about gamey flavor, the term gamey, is because they're not getting that hide off and letting that meat cool as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's true.
They leave that hide on the carcass for a day or whatever, and that's what causes that gamey flavor. So that's one of the things that we focused on. Now, I was going to ask you, because we've been focused on bear here, and obviously we're going to shift gears a little bit as we move along through the podcast, but with bear, we were having a conversation about proper preparation of the meat when you cook it, because bears are real commonly known to have trichinosis.
Yes.
And so Tom said that when they had their restaurant, their 5-star steak restaurant, that they could cook bear at medium or medium rare or whatever. And my impression was you always had to thoroughly cook the bear. So kind of where are you at with that?
You don't have to thoroughly cook it.
Okay.
It's pork.
Sure.
Yep.
It's pork. 140, it's done.
Okay.
That's the temperature that I remember. I've cooked a lot of it.
Yeah, I can imagine you have.
And 140 is a done product.
Mm-hmm.
If you want it done a little more, sure, you can. You lose some of the flavor.
Yep.
It gets a lot drier.
Not quite as tender.
And I was just going to say, and it's going to be tougher.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference on how it's prepared if you're feeding to someone that they're going to like it or not.
Yeah. When you're processing a bear, is that the portioning the same? Like you backstraps and tenderloins and roasts and like
it pretty much is. It's just that the process is a lot different or harder than a deer actually because you've got so much fat. It takes you a lot longer. Yeah.
Sure.
But again,
same cuts of meat.
It's pretty much the same cut of meat. Yes, it is, and you got a lot more trimming to do to get to the meat and to make sure that it's edible.
And boy, is it edible. I love bear meat.
I'm going to stop you right there, boys, because I want to hear all about this. I am so intrigued as a guy that's hunted bear his whole life, 100 years. And as a guy that owned a 5-star steak restaurant where they served bear on the menu, I want to hear all about your favorite preparations. But before we get to that, we got to take a little break so we can keep the lights on. So folks, stick around with Boots and Backstraps. Right after this break, we will be talking about preparation for animals in general, but bear especially we'll start with after this. Boots and Backstraps is proudly brought to you by Homes by Shayne. Making your move with the Homes by Shayne team means an unparalleled customer service experience. That level of service is the foundation of this RE/MAX Results referral-based business. Our driven team of experts communicate with their clients every step of the way, ensuring a memorable experience from the first conversation through your closing day. Go to homesbyshayne.com for more information. Let's get you home. If you would like to sponsor the Boots and Backstraps podcast, or you have an interest in joining our team, send us an email to bootsandbackstrapspodcast@gmail.com. All right, welcome back to Boots and Backstraps. I'm very excited to get right back into our topic of discussion here. We've been talking a lot about, we started with some deer, and then we went kind of into bear, spent a lot of time in bear, and then we went to antelope. But I want to get into meat prep. I know that both of you have done a lot in the way of cooking these animals once you harvest them and process them and that kind of thing. So why don't we start with you, Dave? When you have a bear and you get the roast or the backstrap or whatever, what's your favorite way to prepare the meat?
One of my favorite ways is I like to barbecue everything.
Yes.
I've had a neighbor ask me a couple of times, "Hey, Dave, you got a stove in your house?" Because I'm barbecuing even in winter. But one of my favorites, and it's so simple, is Coca-Cola and soy sauce, and just chunk it up into almost finger-sized food, and let it marinate, and throw it on your grill. It's fabulous. I've served bear that way, deer that way, antelope, everything. It's one of my favorite and easiest ways to cook something.
What would you say the ratio, like how much would you put in of each?
The ratio wasn't anything measured or anything, of course. It was just depending upon how much meat I had in I like to use gallon freezer bags because you can seal them and shake them up and let it sit there.
Oh, yeah.
But I would take, say, like a couple pounds of meat, throw it in there, and sprinkle,
Cover the meat with a
soy bottle, maybe an inch or two out of the soy bottle, and then 1 can of Coke. If it didn't cover it, maybe a little more Coke.
Yeah.
And just let it sit overnight. And I've never had anybody not like it. I've been to many different wild game parties and dinners and stuff, and where everybody's cooking up whatever they got. And the bear meat is the one that people, I can't eat bear meat. I don't like your bear meat.
It's more for me.
That's what I look at it. It's more for me, and I'm taking it home if you don't eat it. And
Right.
The next thing you know, I got a lineup. I did it at the gun club that I shoot at, and everybody said, I can't eat bear meat. Well, pretty soon I had a lineup. I didn't get any of it.
Wow.
Sure.
There was people said, have you tried that bear meat that Dave's got over there? And everybody come back and line it up, and pretty soon they were back for more and more and more.
Yeah, amazing.
That's one of my favorite ways. I don't make a lot of steaks out of the bear.
Okay.
I do more roast,
Sure.
and I love crock pot and roast.
Oh, who
It's
doesn't?
as simple as, you put a little
It's the best.
beef broth in it or chicken broth, whatever you prefer. And your
And
carrots.
bear meat's higher in fat content anyway, right?
Yes. And you just put in your carrots and your celery and your potatoes and let it sit there for the day. You come home, your meal is ready to go, and it's good. When the kids were little, we had one bear, one deer, maybe two if I shot one in Wisconsin. That's what they ate. And then as we got older, the kids got older, they did their own hunting. My family survived on 3 deer and 3 bear. I thought I'd give them a little surprise one day and feed them some beef. I bought ribeye steaks.
Sure.
Cooked
Which
them,
is a nice cut.
cooked them on the grill.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Put them on their plate and they tasted it. And they said, Dad, what's this? I says, well, that's beef and it's ribeye steak.
Yeah.
Can we have a bear steak?
Wow.
They didn't like it.
Yeah, you got them programmed.
So I had them programmed into it, and they're still that way. The kids, even my daughter, bear meat's number 1, antelope's number 2, and then we'll take venison.
It's interesting. We've got 4 young kids in our house, my wife and I, and we have been trying to introduce that wild game thing to them, and they all love it. Mm-hmm. You just get them hooked on the wild game when they're young, because you can harvest a bear and a deer and an antelope and an elk and like those kinds of things. Elk is still my favorite. Just the flavor of that elk meat's unbelievable. But
it is. It's good.
Elk meat is
it's
delicious.
Good. The other thing I can honestly say is when I was younger, growing up in my family with my parents cooking it for me,
sure,
they always overcooked it.
Okay.
And that is one reason that people don't like wild game either. They cooked it like it was liver and cooked it till the death was cooked out of it. I mean, it was so dry, you might as well have been eating cardboard.
If you go past medium, we're not friends anymore.
Well, medium rare. Medium's okay, but medium rare.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt you.
Yeah.
And then,
Medium's the compromise for those people that like the shoe leather.
Yes.
Like, I'll give you medium, but that's as far as I'm going with it.
That's right. I mean, if you don't eat it medium rare, you're not going to like it. I don't. I mean, I don't know a lot of people that do eat wild game in my house or anybody that I know that I've served it to now any more than medium rare.
TK.
Absolutely. I'd love to touch on that. You're talking about a conversation.
I'd love to eat
we
on
had.
that.
Yeah, I wish we had some here.
We had that very same discussion, I don't know, a week or two ago about in the old days people overcooking their wild game.
Yeah.
They thought they had to do it because it was wild game, and they had to make it purified. And they
It's
cooked
from
it
another
up.
planet, Tom.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now people know better. And, I want to touch on that recipe, that Coca-Cola recipe. What a great recipe. I used to do that same very
Coke
thing.
and soy sauce, huh?
Coke and soy sauce.
Coca-Cola, but you got to use a good soy sauce.
You get the sweet and the salty together.
You do. And the Coke, I think, actually tenderizes.
Absolutely. That's the
it
deal
breaks
with
it down.
Coca-Cola.
It's so funny to me, and you see all these people online, like the younger generation, obviously the ones that maybe are a little bit intellectually challenged, and they have these videos where they show, look what Coca-Cola does to an egg, or look what it does to a penny, or look what it does, and I'm like, do you know what's in your stomach right now? It's called hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
Way stronger than
What
Coke.
it does to battery posts, how
Right.
you can clean your battery
Like,
cables.
what's in your body already is way stronger than Coke, so quit it with the Coke.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's where that all came from. Coca-Cola and its many uses. It does break down. It marinates. It tenderizes whatever meat you're marinating it in. And I used to take that a little bit one step different. I used to buy cherry Coke.
Okay.
And I'd marinate it in cherry Coke. And then it got a little sweetness along with the Kikkoman soy sauce.
Yeah.
You don't want to buy La Choy.
Okay, all right.
Well, and
Little soy sauce snob.
I'll throw a little more in there because I have family members that are gluten-free.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay?
Gluten-free
so,
house.
So Coca-Cola you can't use. So I use 7-Up, Sprite, any of that also.
Okay.
That does the job too,
It still does the job. It gives it actually maybe even a little sweeter flavor. I again never had any problems, and every once in a while I'll just spice it up a little bit. I might put some spicy mustard in there,
Sure.
or some Worcestershire sauce or
Worcestershire,
something. Yep. And just to change it a little bit. But most of the time, if I'm going someplace where I know that I can serve it, it's Coca-Cola and soy sauce.
Yep. And I'll expand. I know where you were going with your questions. At the restaurant,
Yeah.
when we served wild game, and I know we've touched on this in the past.
That was your niche, the wild game.
Yeah, our restaurant was a steakhouse. We featured a different wild game every week, fresh seafood on the weekends, so on and so forth. But our wild game, when anyone ordered the wild game, they always had questions. They were very inquisitive because we served everything from rabbit to bison to elk. I mean,
Bison's
bear,
another
You
really
had
good
wild boar. You
wild
had
boar, you
Oh.
name it,
Yep.
red deer. And they always had questions. And I said, well, you have to realize there are no hormones in it. They're not fatty animals, so the meat's very good for you. And we won't cook it for you past medium. We encourage you to order it rare, medium rare. And if we go past medium rare, forgive me, what I would tell the customers is we won't go past medium rare. Because even medium, it's going to be tough. There's no marbling in it. And so we'd educate the people. So they'd always, for the most part, they'd take my word for it. And I'm telling you, never had anybody come back and say, that wasn't some of the best meat I've ever had in
Can I get
my
medium
life.
well? Do you want to wash dishes?
Yeah. No, I actually heard Tom say that, and in his defense, he also said, I can cook it past that, but
We're not going to be responsible.
I'm not responsible.
Yeah.
You're still
If
paying
you
your
don't
check.
if you don't like it, I'm sorry because you're cooking it too far.
You did it to yourself, right, Dave?
Hey, there you go. Yeah.
Well, Danny, our producer, asked me a question, and quite a bit of this podcast.
Hold on,
is
before you get to that.
about bear hunting.
Before you get to that, because I do want to hear the story, but how did you guys prepare it at the restaurant? Aside from temperature, did you have any
Aside from
specific
temperature?
herbs or spices or anything that you like to use that were more popular, maybe?
I think with pheasant, we quite often did a white wine cream sauce for the pheasant. But, we were famous for grilling our steaks over burning hickory.
Wow.
And so most of our wild game, I'm thinking all of it, even the pheasant, would get marked on the wood fire grill.
Yeah.
And I can't really think off the top of my head of another scenario. And I'm sure we had other recipes for different wild games, but we cooked most everything on the wood fire. And then the sauces, the marinades that were included, there was quite a variety of those.
Ugh, making me hungry.
A lot of the spices are whatever you prefer yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, I might like a lot of garlic, and you might not like any. You know, it's whatever you prefer on when you normally eat any of your beef or pork or anything.
We use a lot of garlic in my house.
Right. You know, I mean, I've taken a lot of wild boars too, and the wild boar, I do a lot of rubs on the boar.
Sure.
And it's whatever you like on that. Personally, is what you want to try.
The last handful of years, barbecue in general, the industry has really gotten wildly popular.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have all these outfits that are popping up all over the place that make these different spice blends.
Yes.
Well, the way our
The one I like,
society
shameless plug, is called Meat Church. They're pretty good stuff.
the way our society is lambasted now with all varieties of media, I think everyone's pretty well educated, and they all know. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a specific individual that doesn't realize wild game is better for you than processed beef or chicken or turkey or any of that. I think most people are aware of that now, and now there's just a flood of imagination going on out there with people experimenting with different recipes of different wild game, and it's the coolest thing in the world. I watched Nick from Nick's Wild Ride, Nick Hoffman, and the different recipes they use.
He's getting a lot of promotion on this program, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Nick
all
is,
right.
yeah. Well,
I think I saw a shot
you
of
know
a
what? Nick's a
bunch
pretty
of
good
turkey
guy.
hunters.
That's what I hear.
Nick's a pretty good guy. Yep.
Turkeys and turkey hunters.
Yes.
Well, if we could get more people out of the drive-through, boys, and into the woods, that would be better, right?
It'd be a lot better for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You
So,
wouldn't
Tom,
have to-
being in the woods, you almost didn't get out of the woods, I hear, one time.
Well, you know, we've spent years on bear stand, years and years, and hundreds and hundreds of hours, seeing multitudes of bears. And our producer Danny asked me, "Did you ever have a hairy situation where you had to defend yourself?" And I thought about it, and there was one situation where I could very well have not been here. Dave and I have always archery. We bow hunted bears always, and neither one of us ever carried a sidearm in for protection. Maybe once or twice.
Well, for a while you couldn't,
Yeah,
and then they passed a law
Yeah,
where you
and
could.
Okay.
and so we didn't. Anyway, one particular evening, I was going to one stand called the Beaver Stand, and
I'm leaving that one alone, Danny.
well, it was by a beaver dam, and the beaver bait is what we called it. And our friend Brian, we call Wheels, he was going to the field bait. Anyway, he was unloading, and I was going to drive over to where I'm going, and we were talking about someone that in Wisconsin that got pulled out of his stand like a few days prior to that evening, and he woke up beneath his stand. His ankle was broken. A sow had ran up the tree because she had cubs, and she knew he was up there and dragged him out. And he lived, and everything was fine, I guess. But that thought was ever present in my mind. So I did have a sidearm in my vehicle, so I brought a sidearm with me that night.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was a pistol that my father carried in World War I.
Wow.
I don't know that it's legal to hunt with, but I wasn't hunting with it.
No, self-defense.
I was just carrying it for protection. It was World War I Colt 45.
Wow. Probably worth a pretty penny at this point.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, lo and behold, a sow and two cubs came into the bait, and I just kept thinking about that guy that got pulled out of his stand, and So I reached over onto my hip, and I unsnapped my holster, and I pulled the gun out, and I set it on the seat of my stand. I was facing the tree, and the bait was behind. And I swear I didn't get that gun down there a minute, and that bear sent off the distress signal. The wind shifted, and she caught a wind of me. One of the little cubs went down into the swamp. The other one ran straight up my tree. And you have to realize, archery hunting, I don't think I've ever shot a bear further than 15 yards. Typically, it's anywhere between 12 and 15 yards that would be...
You're right over the top of the bait.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that bear saw me up in the tree, and it was like a cartoon. She was kicking up mud, and she was coming for me. I only had time to pick up the pistol and shoot straight down on my stand, which was right in front of her nose. And thank God she piled on the brakes, and she kind of ran off into the woods a little bit, and she was snapping her teeth and making all kinds of racket up there. And Boo Boo is sitting above me about 4 feet or 3 feet. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at, I got a pistol in this hand. Mm-hmm. I got a bow in this hand. And I got a turd coming out the back for a stabilizer. And I got my eyes as big as silver dollars. And I don't know what's going to happen next. And it seemed like an eternity, but Boo Boo shimmied down the tree, and it got right at head level with me. And it peeked around the tree at me. And I'm like, get out of here. And
Whoa, now
down
get.
thing it went, and off into the woods. And I'm like, oh. If I hadn't pulled my pistol out, it would have been a rodeo in that tree, because she was going to be up in a split second, and she was going to be on me, and I would have been jumping off to another tree or whatever would have happened.
Yeah.
It would have been ugly.
Yes.
And so, Danny, there you go. That was the one time that I really am glad that I had a sidearm with me. And who knew, after all those years of hunting and never carrying a sidearm, the one night that I chose to bring one, thank goodness I did. Oh.
Yeah, you wouldn't be here.
I don't know. I'd be here, I wouldn't maybe
I'd be
look
talking
the
to an
same.
empty chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe I wouldn't quite look the same.
Dang.
Who knows?
Dang. I was actually going to ask if you always use, a bow, but yes, you do.
Yes,
Well, we did.
Yeah, we did. Yep. A lot of guys use rifles, and
Some guys use shotguns.
now it's legal to use crossbow on some of them
Yep.
too. So
Yeah.
you can use
Is that
whatever you
for
want.
all game? Like for you two in particular?
No.
No, we use rifles and bows both.
Yeah, we use actually whatever gets us out in the woods. I know it's the same with David. We use archery. We'd use a rifle. We'd use a muzzle loader, the bow. Whatever it is, whatever the season is, wherever we could go to keep hunting, we got proficient at all of them.
Blow darts.
And I'll keep shooting the bow until I can't pull it back anymore, and then I guess I might have to go to a crossbow, but I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't
Put the
gotten
bear to
quite
sleep.
that old yet. But yeah, and other stories about being threatened by bears.
Yeah, do tell.
One of our good bear hunting buddies
Yeah.
in our bear camp, 5 years ago, is it? 6 maybe?
Are you talking about what
Brandon.
we were talking about earlier?
Brandon, yes.
I think it's way more than 5 years.
I think it's around 5 years, but 5 to 6 anyhow. He was, and maybe some people saw
Wait,
it.
hold on. We got to test him real quick. Tom, what day of the week is it?
Thursday.
Maybe some people have heard about it and stuff, about the guy that got mauled by the bear up in Pine County. That was our hunting friend.
Yep,
So-
you're a great friend.
What do you know of the story then, Dave?
I know that they were tracking a wounded bear
Okay.
in the dark, which we do a lot. Didn't carry a firearm, mainly because the guy that did get mauled pretty much wasn't afraid of bears anymore.
Right?
We'd hunted them long enough, and I'm afraid of them, but not definitely afraid of them, and he was not afraid of them at all.
Okay.
We've had many incidents where they stared us down, they walked to us, they talked to us, they do a lot of different things, but he didn't have a
Pretty
firearm.
desensitized.
He did not have a firearm with him. There was 4. It was him, his girlfriend, the guy that shot the bear, and his girlfriend, and another guy that was an EMT. They were tracking the bear, and it crossed a creek. The one guy did have a gun. He didn't cross the creek, and they jumped the bear on the other side of the creek. I was supposed to be there with him, which I wasn't. I was muskie fishing instead. But he thought, well, I'll just kind of see where the bear went, see if I can find any blood or that kind of stuff. And he did tell the gentleman that shot the bear that, he says, in my mind, I'm sitting here running, what would Dave do? And in his mind, he told me when I was visiting him in the hospital that he says, I told myself I should turn around and walk out.
Yeah.
But he said, I didn't do that. He said, I went ahead, a lot of blood. They thought they'd track it. The other gentleman that shot the bear sat there and waited so he could find his way back. It was dark out.
Sure.
And he said the next thing he remembers, he was blindsided like a linebacker. Boom, hit him from the side, and that was a bear attack.
Wow.
He survived, able to do some work yet, but he ended up killing the bear with a 4-inch pocket knife.
There we have it.
Is this him?
That's him.
That's him. Yep. Killed the bear.
Look at the size of that bear.
And the bear was 500 plus pounds.
Oof.
That's a big bear.
Yep. Stood on his chest 3 or 4 times, pouncing on him, bit him in the legs, thighs, chest, cheek, everything. Destroyed his left arm.
So what would you tell someone to not have this happen? I don't know. Is it it's normal to track them?
Yeah, well, you can not have it happen by carrying a firearm, for one, which is legal now. Since that's happened, we've gotten smarter, I guess you could call it. We do not track at night unless you hear a death moan.
Yeah.
If you hear that, it's pretty much done.
And just for the folks that are inexperienced again, what is this death moan?
Death moan is almost a human scream.
Okay.
You will hear.
We could imitate it, but it's
it's gross.
Let's
it's
not.
Not gross.
I want to sleep. I want to sleep tonight. Thanks.
It's just Okay, let's say that. You'll hear something out there.
Yeah.
That
you'll know it.
You'll know it's done, and then we'll go track them that night. But most of the time now, we wait till daytime.
Sure.
And one of the reasons that people like to track them at night, like or not, is what we talked about earlier about meat spoilage.
Yes.
With that fur coat on, if you really enjoy eating bear and you want to do the honor of serving that meat to your family, you have a little bit of incentive to get that meat and get it open and get the hide off so the meat doesn't spoil. And so in people's behalf or in their defense, that's one of the reasons they go after them at night rather than waiting till the morning.
And they did wait before they started tracking it to give it time to pass and all of this stuff. But the situation turned real bad when he decided not to turn around. And that is one thing that I don't care if it's deer, bear, no matter what it is. If you're tracking and you jump the animal, it's time to back off.
Yes.
Back out of there, go back later, go back the next day, depending upon. I've read a lot of different things. They say on a deer, if you jump a deer, give it 8 hours. So that's the next day, as far as I'm concerned.
Been an experience like that with an elk.
Yeah, but you hate to have that happen because the meat can spoil. And that's the worst thing that can happen to a hunter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because most
for
hunters,
trophy hunters, they don't care. But
I was just going to say, most hunters, though,
right,
are for the meat. And they don't want to see this happen.
Yes.
So that's why we do some of the things we do that maybe aren't the safest or the best idea.
I should take back what I said.
Yeah.
There are a lot of trophy hunters that, in fact, do love the meat and harvest the meat and are responsible. And
yes, they
are. I've seen a few, and rephrasing this, a few trophy hunters that don't care about the meat and just want the horns or the hide or whatever.
Right. And that happens. That's in there too. But that's why people like myself have tracked many, many bears.
I have a question. As far as the room that you guys are sitting in, our studio, is Tom's great room, right? But what makes it different than like a trophy room, you know what I mean? Like, I've had a lot of people be like, oh, I bet it's uncomfortable to be in the studio. And I was like, no, it's kind of beautiful because I know Shayne and Tom are incredibly, have a ton of integrity for hunting. and honor, like the game, like you harvest it. You're not just murdering. You know what I mean? You want to talk about that, the ethics?
Killing. Yep. I'm sitting here in this Tom's room, and I've probably been with him with a lot of these animals, and
absolutely,
it's not a trophy to us. Is not always a great big rack, a huge bear. It's the trip that we've had, the experience we've had, the
stories.
If you harvest an animal, that tops off the trip or the part of the trophy, but it could be big or small. It's all about the trip. It's all about the hunt.
It's all about the camaraderie.
It's the camaraderie, the fun, the introducing somebody else to it. That's part of a trophy also.
We've hunted so much,
it's not all about
Dave.
the animal.
We've hunted so much, and we were fortunate. You don't see them all on the camera, but there's quite a bit of nice trophies over here. I mean, like that elk is not necessarily a big one, nor is that. But on the other side of the camera, you see some little doinkers that I've harvested also. We just love the experience, but through so many years in our experience, we were fortunate enough to harvest some bigger ones like we see. But that's not what it's about for us. I look at these things, and every one of them is a memory. Who I was with, what time of year it was. Oh, yeah, all right, for instance, the 6-point elk in the middle, that's a pretty decent elk. But if you see the two elk on each side of it, those are they're both 5-pointers, I think.
Yeah, they're 5s.
No, this one's a 6-pointer too. But they're just not that big. And then you see up the caribou up there. That caribou is actually a relatively small caribou.
Double shovel, though.
Yeah, it's got a double shovel, and it's the only caribou I ever killed, and it's the only animal I ever killed in velvet. So it's on the wall, and I have just a wonderful memory of that. And those are not they're trophies, but they're really memories for me.
Even as we were growing up, we went hunting.
Yep.
It wasn't to shoot the big buck. It was so we could get the meat.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it was still a trophy.
You're not going to throw the head in the rack away. You're eating the meat, but you keep the...
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if it was a deer, the racks, I can't tell you how many I have stacked up.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the little doinkers and the does.
The European mounts that you get, they're great.
What's a European mount?
That's the bear skull ones that you can see, like his elk here behind us here. Those are European mounts, and they...
Without the hide on them.
Without the hides and stuff. They turn out great, and it's a way to display the animal. You're giving the animal its credit it deserves, and it's still a memory that we have.
Absolutely.
What's a doinker?
I will say this,
that's Tom.
Tom, what's a doinker?
A doinker? Here we go. Well, it's an expression that my old friend Eric Myers uses for deer that don't match up to his high standards. They're just a smaller deer, a little deer, yearling. That's what a doinker is referred to, I guess. I've heard it before. But, we are, and this is the phases that you go through in hunting when you're a kid. I know you all are familiar with this. You go out, you want to go out, and you want to kill everything. You're just so excited to be in the woods and the fields, and you want to kill a lot of animals, and you want to fill your quota. And then you get to the stage where you're a little more selective, and you calm down a little bit. You definitely want to get that animal.
I'll add to your story here. You also gain a lot of experience, right?
Right.
You get way better at hunting bigger animals.
Yeah, and then when we get to our age, and I know there's a lot of people that are listening to us right now that are our age, and we just love being in the woods and seeing the animals. And if a big bugger comes along, we're going to drop them, and we're going to let the young ones grow up. And hopefully our nephews and younger hunters will have an opportunity to harvest those, and we're certainly not going to pass them up. And then if it gets down to that last day...
They're part of your doinker collection, right? If you get it and it's smaller.
Yes.
Add to your doinks.
And then we've had the discussion where, I don't need to shoot so we can always shoot a doe. and if we just want the meat, and quite often we do just want the meat.
Yes.
So we like to let the little ones grow up. It's all a process. I think some people call it the 5 stages of hunting, and other people call it the 4 stages of hunting. And there's Driller.
Yeah.
Nice mule deer he just got this fall.
Yep.
And you were in New Mexico
New Mexico, yeah.
with Tuffy?
Yep.
What took you down to New Mexico? I mean, obviously on a mule deer hunt, but
Right.
why New Mexico?
I've hunted.
It's a nice
with
picture.
I hunted with the outfitter before, Mangus Outfitters.
Sure.
Super guy, great. Been hunting there for 25 years.
I've seen
Okay.
Tuffy on TV a number of
And,
times.
He's hunted with a lot of big shots, not me, but big shots. And
That's a nice looking muley, though.
I've been down there. It was a decent mule deer. It didn't have the forks on the tines, which I'd like to had, but I've been down there 5-6 times mule deer hunting, and I've never taken an animal. And Tuffy says to me, "Are you ever going to shoot anything?" And I says, I'm not getting any younger. I might. And so
That's a real respectable deer.
it was a very, very nice buck, and I was happy I got him.
Yeah.
And you've got some good mule deer meat.
Oh, yeah, and that's one thing I never said during the processing of animals is a good, I think it's a reputable source. Mark Comiskey from the old Mark's Meats in Circle
Yep.
Pines butchered many, 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 many deer. That's what he did. And he always told me the problem that people have with deer is they think they got to let them hang to age. A white-tailed deer, a mule deer, does not have any marbling in their meat.
Yep.
To do not have to hang. You can harvest it and butcher it within hours. And he said, you'll have some of the best meat. Well, I'm in New Mexico this year, and they're talking about this mule deer, and he says, oh, yeah, he says, they're terrible to eat. And I says, I said, I've had one before, and I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah.
They said, oh, we don't like it. So, I mean, this animal, I took it back that afternoon. I skun it. I quartered it. I deboned it. I was going to be there another 5 days, so I found a guy that could wrap it and do things and freeze it for me.
Yeah.
And I had it all done when I went home. I got home. The first thing I did is thaw some out, invited my kids over, and we cooked it. And they're telling me it's better than whitetail.
David, I like mule deer way better than whitetail.
So anyhow, that was one thing that I meant to
Love
say
it.
back during the processing. People hang deer, and they don't have to.
Right.
And it was a good source to me. My parents always thought, my dad, my grandfather, everybody, I had to hang them to age them like beef. You don't have to. Some people will argue it, whether it's a right thing or not. I haven't done it for 30 years, and I never have a problem. So I just assumed that the guy that told me was probably correct.
Yeah.
Another tidbit on getting your meat processed properly. Here's a nice whitetail.
Yep.
Couple of nice whitetails. There's the crew.
Yeah, that's
Dave and his 2 sons.
So your oldest son on the far
That's
left.
my
there?
oldest son, Tom, on the left. Yep. And that was...
That was up by
Tom
Pillager.
Jr.
What did Danny say?
Tom Jr.
Tom Jr.
Tom Jr., yeah.
That might be one of his first deer he ever got. Yep.
My wife and I
It's a
lived
nice
up
looking
by
buck.
Pillager, Minnesota, and we had a little ranch up there, and it was kind of neat because it butt right into the northwest corner of Camp Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
And Camp Ripley, for many, many, many years, was quite the archery destination for bow hunters to harvest big bucks. And I don't think that's the case anymore. What do you think? Have you heard anything about it?
Yeah, it's
have
not
wolves.
like, again, we can all say it's not like it used to be.
Yeah. I know they have a fair amount of wolves up there.
They do have a lot of wolves, the way I understand. And it used to be, you had to wait almost to get a license there.
Right.
I actually hunted in Camp Ripley when I was 12, 13, 14 years old with a recurve.
Wow.
And it was, you waited outside of the gate, and they let a certain number of cars go in, and after that number, they'd shut the gate. And they'd open up certain areas in Camp Ripley, and it was like a bumper car racetrack to get there. They would run into your car and all kinds of different things to try to beat you to the spot.
To hunt deer.
To hunt deer. And
I know. I heard those stories all my life.
And my father actually shot, and we know that he shot and killed 5 different bucks in there. But we were taught, and he was taught, that if you shot something, you gave it some time to die. Well, by the time we got there, somebody had taken the deer.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, 5 different times. I hunted there 5 years in a row, and then I quit hunting there. And so did my father. But then it got so popular.
Unbelievably unethical.
Yes, then it got really popular because there's big deer, big body deer, big racks. Everybody wanted to go there. And then they had to have a drawing for it. And the drawing, sometimes it took 2, 3, 4 years to get a tag. Now I understand, and I haven't applied, I haven't kept up on it closely, but I do believe that they can't even give away all the tags now because people have given up on it.
Because there's so many wolves in there.
Because of wolves. That's a whole different subject. I don't want to get on it because...
because we're good people and we're Christian.
Well,
it just raises a whole bar of where we don't want to go.
And we're up against the clock here, gentlemen.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I have to interject. Dave, it's been so much fun having you on the show, and
agreed.
Just like whether we're on a cruise, Dave was the best man in my wedding, and whether we're just sitting at a bar having a beer.
You didn't try to talk her out of it?
We just have so many wonderful, wonderful memories of hunting, and I know you've got an amazing amount of fishing stories. But, we've only scratched the surface of the hunting we've done. We didn't talk much about elk hunting and turkey hunting and some of the other things we've done. It's just been a pleasure having you here. And, I could do this. It doesn't seem like we've been on very long. And
almost 2 hours.
And we can just keep going and going and going. And hopefully our crowd has found it interesting to hear some of our stories. And I hope certainly beneficial because... You and I both have lived the life, and Shayne as well now, of eating that meat that we're harvesting and taking good care of it. I hope we brought that home to a lot of people mentally. Take care of that animal and know that you're eating the best protein on the planet. And it's truly a privilege to sit your family down and eat that good meat. So take care of it properly. What else have you got, Shayne?
I was just going to say, to kind of go off of where you went, Tom, just thank you, Dave, obviously,
thank you.
For joining us in studio, and we will most definitely have you back again.
Whoop.
Because I feel like we have barely scratched the surface of your hunting experience. I have taken a lot away from this and the little nuggets of knowledge that you dropped, and I'm looking forward to getting more.
It's not all knowledge. There's some luck in there, too.
Yeah, with anything there is, right?
Right. Without luck, we don't have it.
All right, real quick. You 3 gentlemen, what is your favorite meat to eat?
My favorite meat. Man, my favorite wild game meat.
Do we got to come back
Antelope.
to you? Antelope?
Antelope. I'm going to go on. I love moose meat. There's another topic we haven't even touched on. I love, and like David said, we took, and Shayne knows, because he harvested an antelope with me 2 falls ago. Mm-hmm. Hey, we got the hide off, got to go. I love antelope meat. Love it.
How about you, Dave?
I've got to go with bear meat.
All right.
That was going to be my second.
Yeah, I knew it. I was going to say, well, if Tom says antelope, I'm going to say bear. If Tom says bear, I'm going to say antelope.
Were you guys signaling each other?
Because the two of them are so close to neck and neck in my family and myself that I truthfully, though, if my kids are here, they would tell you bear meat. They have grown up on it, and they just love it. And it's because of the processing.
Yeah.
It's got to be done correctly.
Yes.
It is very, very important.
Yes, it is.
And bear meat is my number one.
So I have never had moose, and I have not had bear, so I can't speak to either of those. But for me, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it's definitely elk. Something about that flavor in that elk meat, and I just cannot get enough of it.
I think I'm going to have to take you up to Oscar's this year, maybe harvest a bear.
We've been
watching bears.
I was just picking on Dave. I'm like, you got to take me bear hunting.
Oscar and
He's
I
the bear whisperer over here.
No, I'm not. There's one of them on TV.
Oscar and I have been watching a couple bears, and he doesn't have the desire to shoot anymore, and I really don't either.
Come on
but
now.
I sure would like to eat some more bear meat.
Come on now.
Well,
Sign
that's
Shayne
it.
up.
I'm getting yelled
Take
at
my wallet
because,
and run.
because I haven't harvested a bear in the last couple of years.
Well, come on, let's do
and
it.
the kids are saying, Dad, where's the bear meat?
All right.
So,
All right,
and-
we're
and-
doing it one way or another this fall.
Yep, and they're busy with their families and don't get the time enough. So,
You know what he'd
gonna
really
have to do
enjoy,
it.
Dave, is going on a spring bear hunt up in Canada. If they open the bear,
If
excuse
open
me,
Canada.
if they open the borders,
it would be fun. But again, part of the whole deal is being able to do your own thing.
Yeah.
And once you've done the bear hunting, and again, we're back on bear hunting, but if you go with an outfitter, you will learn enough, I think, in one time to where you could next time do it on your own.
Yeah.
And help yourself by learning. I know we got to go, but short thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do a lot of muskie fishing.
Okay.
And I thought I knew a lot about muskie fishing. My father got me started. I was 12 years old. Until one day at my work, I met a guy that was a guide for muskies, took me muskie fishing, and this was only 10 years ago.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, I'm in his boat going, I don't know anything about muskie fishing. This guy taught me so much that I just went, wow.
In an afternoon, right?
Yes. In one day, I learned more from him than I probably did in the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And that's why you can always say you're never too old to learn.
Oh, that's for sure.
Well, I'm enjoying this time. I'm certainly with you, Tom, as much as we've spent together on the road and hunting and that kind of thing, but just getting to meet some of your friends that are experienced hunters, and I really, truly am honored to be sitting on the same sofa with you. So thank you for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we
As I said
appreciate it.
before, Shayne, we got a lot of colorful guests coming up on the show.
Well, I'm just hoping this year I have a little luck and I can draw an elk tag in New Mexico.
There you go.
There we are.
All right, y'all. Well, thanks for joining us again for another episode of Boots and Backstraps. Don't forget to send us an email to bootsandbackstrapspodcast@gmail.com with any questions you might have about the podcast, about the topics that we talk about the guests that we've got in studio, that kind of thing. And of course, we will be filtering through those and potentially drawing out some lucky listeners to come and sit in studio and watch an episode of the podcast.
Boy,
TK.
we got a lot of fun. Got a lot of fun podcasts coming up in the future, folks. And
Yes, we do.
Hey, whether you're belting out your favorite country song or you're out there pursuing your favorite game animal, I encourage you to use that same passion to pursue the Lord. He'll teach you to shoot straight. We'll see you next week. Come on now.
The hunt is on, looking for backstraps, way deep in the woods, tracking in a swamp to a hay field under the harvest moon. When the tags are filled, it's time to switch up our boots. Head down to the honky tonk, get us a swing dance or two. We're talking about boots and backstraps.